Devlin.
Words matter.
I was going to put him, excuse me.
The platform.
You're in the pool and you got a cocktail in your hand, and we know how you as Aussie boys travel, mate. I want to know that there's either budgies or there's a thong on.
Nude. Absolutely nude.
Yes, stark
I'm
bollock
letting,
naked. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yep, I'm letting my standoff half do his thing, and I'm just paddling around in the pool.
We'll talk next week. Letting my standoff half. That is appalling. And the visual image, equally so. Yeah, and our poor listeners. But, this is what, if you want the man, then you got to take everything that comes with the man. Don't you, Andy?
That's exactly right. And listen, Marty, I didn't honestly see anything wrong with it. But the real problem came when I went down the air bridge. The captain didn't appreciate my...
Mate, look, that's it. Look, I've always got a couple of rules in life, and one of them is this. If I'm anywhere and somebody gets the Noddy or the Johnson out, you smack it with the hardest object you can possibly find, and that's not one of your own, and then you get the hell out of the room, right? That's one of the rules.
Yeah, play on.
You move on. Hey, speaking of the Ashes, hey, cock-a-doodle-doo, you drew. You didn't even win. You come back with your tail between your legs. How can you celebrate that?
We came back with our tail between our legs, but we also came back with a little thing called the urn.
There is that.
You can join the queue of Stuart Broad, Johnny Bairstow, and Piers Morgan to line up and kiss my hairy bum.
That's exactly, and mate, and I love it. I love the fact that they're sitting there claiming this moral victory. Yeah, but there is no such thing. We know that. But if there was such a thing, and if you could be neutral for half a second, did they outplay you in those last three tests?
Absolutely, they did.
Doesn't matter though, does it? Doesn't matter dick though, does it? No.
It doesn't matter. And the cries of extra hours or emergency days or put the lights on and change the rules. And then there was the ball change, which changed the fifth test dramatically. Now, I was away. I didn't get to see it all. I've read up on it, and if there is an investigation into this, there'll be a lot of people watching and a lot of pressure on the umpires. A new ball or a different ball considerably changes a game. If it's here or there, who cares? That's just the way it goes. But if it's outright manipulation, that's huge. That really is. There's no place in that.
Oh, here we go. So what? Sandpaper under? I mean, do you want me to keep going?
Oh no, sandpaper. I launched into them more than perhaps anyone. Absolutely disgusting, and it still sits in the back of my mind. Disgusting and unacceptable. And look, if we want to go down the moral road, I've still got doubts about some of those guys from Sandpaper Gate being able to represent the country. I really do.
Yeah, cool.
I think it's that big an issue, mate. And look, I'm in the minority. Most Australians will say they've served their penance, leave them be, don't sledge them, let them back in. I'm not so sure.
Now, I tell you why I'm not, and I'm with you on this, and I'm with you on this because, if they'd come back and they'd been remorseful and they'd apologised, I would have accepted it. But that contrived press conference where Steve Smith got his father there so he could sob in his arms, and then David Warner, we were saying here in New Zealand the day before, and David Warner's going to come back late through the airport with his kids in his arms. Oh, he's a dad. Look at him, he's a dad. It was just so good. That made me sick. Question for you. What is more chance of happening? The Wallabies beat the All Blacks in Dunedin this weekend, or the Matildas take out the entire Women's World Cup of football? What's got more chance?
Oh, the Matildas by a mile. And look, I don't know if it'll happen, but I can tell you one thing that won't happen: the Wallabies won't beat the All Blacks. Not a chance. I actually watched the game last weekend on holidays with a couple of New Zealand boys, and a whole range of things we were talking about, and what it boiled down to is the Australians just don't have it.
No.
Whatever it is, they don't have it.
Don't have it
at the moment. Whether the All Blacks do on a huge stage under massive field pressure or scoreboard pressure, that's a question for another time. But the Wallabies certainly don't have it.
Second question for you. What is more chance of happening, Andy? The Wallabies beat the All Blacks in Dunedin, or the Eels make the 8?
Eels make the 8.
Oh, you got no chance of making the 8. You got to play the Broncos and the Panthers, mate.
We'll give the Broncos a touch-up. I've got no doubt about that. We slipped from, when I say we, the mighty Parramatta Eels, they slipped down to 11th, and we're a shandy ahead. We're a shandy ahead of the Titans, the Dolphins and the Roosters. So it could potentially get a whole lot worse. We play the Dragons this weekend. You would like to think with Dylan Brown back in the side, which is another argument we could have for another day. You would like to think that the Parramatta is a decent old chance. But the way the bottom half of the top 8 fell last week, the Raiders, the Sharks, the Cowboys, all fell. The Titans, the Eagles and the Knights all won and rose. So we were writing off teams 2 weeks ago, and now we've sort of got to stop and scratch our heads a little and think, okay, they're back in. What's happening here? And an advantage the Knights and the Eagles have got is they drew earlier this year, so they're on odd points. They're basically just competing with one another, because if it comes to same amount of wins plus that 1 point for the draw, the Knights and the Eagles are in a far better position than the Sharks, Cowboys or Eels. So, mate, interesting month ahead, really interesting month ahead. And, of course, a lot of it starts with Friday night. What a must-win game this is. And these are the games that in the past the Warriors haven't always won. A game where they are favourite. They're on the road. Their record is good. Their record is good against the Titans. On paper, they outplay them. In years past, that's when the alarm bells start going off. Titans had a good win last weekend. It was only the Dolphins, but they had a good win, and there was cause for optimism in the way they're playing. But the Warriors rested up. Looking forward to it, mate. I'm looking forward to all 8 games this weekend, because all 8 games have a bearing on the minor premiership, the top 4 or the top 8, so that there's not a game that doesn't have anything hinging on it.
Gripping is what I would call it. Andy Raymond Unfiltered with us. And to be fair, and I don't want to be insulting, mate, but when you start talking about all that shite down the end over here in the corner, I kind of drift off a bit. I'm sorry, but I'm looking up at the Panthers. I'm looking up at the Broncos. I'm sitting there and I'm going, half of those names you mentioned, I'm trying to think, what comp do those go? Oh, that's right, they're in the lower echelon of the comp, aren't they? A couple of questions for you.
Jeez, you've
I've changed. I know,
I've changed. The Warriors are in third, and you're a completely different bloke.
Mate, I tell you, and the A part of the A-hole is only going to get worse from here, mate, depending on how much we win. It's ba-da-da-da-da-da, bring it over here, and I'll slap your buttocks hard. And anyway, couple of questions. Valentine Holmes on Jaden Campbell. We've talked about this a lot, Andy. And I'm just revolted by this kind of stuff. Come on, rugby league, do the right thing. We had the King, who's got dementia, CTE, and you and I both know, you've dealt with this, you've spoken to a lot of players on your brilliant podcast, mate, that the head knocks these blokes have taken, the pleasure they've given us, the amount of times we've roared at the TV, we've loved watching them play, and now they're going through all of these health things. Well, when Valentine Holmes smacks Campbell like that, he gets 10 in the bin and comes back on. League has got to catch up with rugby here. They've got to stamp this out of the game. He should have gone. That to me was a red card hit.
Not even up for debate, Marty. Not even up for debate. That's the crazy thing. We see a lot of collisions where if there was 10 people in the room, 5 would say sin bin, 5 would say send off. So I can understand those ones and the referee erring on the side of caution. But this was point of the shoulder to the head, automatically off,
ugly.
Mate.
Ugly.
Wally's come out with the CTE, diagnosis, and it's terrible. Mate, I'm going to tell you one thing, and this is something the league is playing down, and everyone is turning a blind eye to it. Wally is going to be in the majority. In 10 years of time, only the minority of players, will not have CTE issues. The majority will. It's at the moment, I'm not going to say novel. At the moment, we're still acting as though we're surprised.
Yes, we are.
a guy from the 1980s who played 300 games, an Origin Test match. He's got CTE. And whilst it is terrible, it is horrible. You wouldn't wish it upon anyone. If you could wave a magic wand, you could fix it all. But at the moment, we're treating it as it's something out of the ordinary.
Yes, that's the way of putting it.
This is just going to be the bloody norm, and that's horrifying, mate. It really is.
I also want your views quickly on the Antichrist celebrating their 2007 and 9 premiership wins, which were stripped because of the salary cap abuses. And this is the Melbourne Storm, and I've been reading a lot about Billy Slater and Cameron Smith saying, hey, you don't know, guys don't know what it was like. These guys worked hard. Look, it doesn't matter how they worked. You rorted the salary cap. You cheated, you clowns, okay? Those titles were stripped off you. I'm amazed the NRL hasn't gone in there and actually got the trophies back. Why are they still allowed these things?
It's, mate, damned if you do, damned if you don't. I was stunned the Melbourne Storm came out and acknowledged those dates and those years, you know, in their celebrations. I have spoken to so many people about this and interviews on the podcast about it, and my take on it is they are footballers. And some of the guys have even said, you know, as long as I've got money in my bank account, I don't know how much is going in, and I don't know really what my contract said. The face of the salary cap saga at the Melbourne Storm were the Melbourne Storm players. The actions were by several accountants and you know, people without a face in a back office who weren't plastered all over the newspapers. They got the sack, but they basically got off scot-free. They're all working in other organisations at the moment. They're the ones that I'd love to throw hammers at. I really would. I think a lot of the players, if not all of the players, didn't know what was happening. And I say that honestly. I just don't know. A player would know the total amount he is on, and that'd be about it. I really think, and maybe New Zealand is different, maybe rugby union is different, but I think the average league player would know, okay, I'm on $500,000 a year, divide that by 26 payments a year, okay, I'm getting an average of this every fortnight, and I think that'd be as far as it goes. Player managers and the faceless staff at the Melbourne Storm that have moved on without any serious reprimand or criminal charges, they're the ones that I want to throw hammers at.
Finally, a little love poem to send you on your way before you tell us what's on the podcast. Roses are red, violets are blue. As much as I like you, I don't ever want to see you nude. What is on the podcast, mate?
This week, the only guy to win a Dally M medal for 2 different clubs, the great Michael Potter, who was one of the great fullbacks in the late 80s, early 90s, ended up at the Western Reds, and how's this for a completely different era? He was a centre coming through the grades, through school, through the under-23s reserve grade, and one of the selectors came down to him Tuesday night at Canterbury, and he said, can you play fullback? Have you played fullback? He said, yes. Just an out-and-out lie. He got his debut as a fullback. It was the first game he ever played in that position. He went on to win 2 Dally M medals. Really good story.
Andy, thank you so much, mate. ARU, that's Andy Raymond Unfiltered. That is the man's podcast.